Hi, Mr. Schmidt. This is my TED Talk on the Kite Runner, and I will be doing it on Thomas Foster's How to Read Literature Like a Professor chapter, Soda Season. So, Thomas Foster mentions how seasons have been used for centuries to connect humans to nature. So he even mentioned that Shakespeare, when he wrote about it, that it was already a cliche idea. So seasons represent parts of life. So spring represents youth and childhood, while summer represents adulthood and romance and fulfillment and passion. And autumn represents the decline of life and middle age and tiredness, but also harvest. And winter represents old age and resentment and death. So Khaled Hosseini actually uses the season cliche, but he uses it in a new twist. He uses irony to convey the lives of Amir and Hassan, primarily Amir. So when I opened up chapter 6 and I read the words winter, when I read that first line, I was scared because I knew that something bad might happen. However, as I kept reading on, I realized that Hosseini wasn't talking about the primarily associated winter of death and decline. He was using it in the opposite way, in the ironic way, where it was youthful, just like spring or summer, but primarily youthfulness, because this is the time of year that Amir gets out of school and he has 3 months off of school. And so he describes that the first thing that Amir does in the winter is he finds the driveway, my father's car, the walls, the trees, the rooftops, and the hills buried under a foot of snow. I smile. The sky is seamless and blue, the snow so white my eyes burn. I shovel a handful of the fresh snow into my mouth, listen to the muffled stillness, broken only by the cawing of crows. I walk down the front steps barefoot and call for Hassan to come out and see. So this snow is not described as cold and harsh. It's described as almost comforting. Now, Thomas Foster also talks about snow in a different chapter called It's More Than Rain and Snow. But I'll talk about that later. So in chapter 6, Hosseini talks about winter and how Amir loves winter. Now, this is a little different from Hassan. Now, Hassan does love winter because Amir is with him and he gets to play with him, but Hassan doesn't really have that big transition like Amir does because Hassan doesn't go to school. So while Amir has these big transitions in life, Hassan really doesn't. He stays stagnant because he's not really given the opportunities that Amir does. Now, I'd like to go back to snow and talk about how it's more than just snow. So as I described in chapter 6, the beginning of chapter 6, it's described as comforting and fun, and Thomas Foster talks about snow and he describes it as a blanket in one point where it's comforting. However, in a different section, when Amir witnesses Hassan being sexually assaulted, the streets are muddy and they still have snow, but as darkness falls and Amir is still looking for Hassan after Hassan had gone kite running, he describes how he's running in the streets, and he says, "My boots squished in mud with every step and my breath puffed out in white clouds before me. The narrow path ran parallel on one side to a snow-filled ravine through which a stream may have tumbled in the spring." Now, the streets aren't described as white and filled with snow. They're described as dirty and muddy, and later in this scene, Amir loses his innocence as he watches his friend be sexually assaulted by Asef. And now this really shows, though color white is represented with purity, and so as these streets are muddy, purity and innocence, as these streets are muddy, it shows how Amir is no longer this innocent little boy, but a sullied man. Not quite a man, actually, but he's forced to grow up. Now, back to winter. Winter is death, and it's sort of the end of one's life, but however, this is sort of the beginning of Amir's life. Before this, he was sheltered and he was innocent, but now he's been pushed into the world, almost like spring going into summer, because summer is adulthood and spring is youth. But now Amir is in this strange limbo between youth and adulthood. While he's been sullied by this incident, he's still a boy, but now he's been pushed into this. And it's very ironic that it happens during the winter rather than during the spring or the summer, where you would see. You may notice this jump cut. My camera died. Sorry about that. So, in conclusion, this is very different than if Amir had experienced this during the spring, because it would have shown how he was supposed to progress into manhood. However, because it was in the winter, when it's typically associated with death and the end of life, it's very ironic that Hosseini would choose this season to show the progression of a young boy. So, thank you for listening to my analysis. I hope it's fun to watch. Thank you.